What an audience. It's the first time for me to do this. I'm a pilot, not a big speaker, so please take this into consideration when you listen to me. You know, pilots, normally they only do short radio calls. They are requested to do short radio calls and not long speeches on the radio. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled and honored to have been elected the new chairman of the European Helicopter Association, taking over the challenge from Jaime Marquet, who after 3 years of outstanding achievements and a long career decided to retire. I can tell you right now that together with my esteemed colleagues, François Lassalle from Heli Offshore, I think he's not here today, and with Thierry Couderc from Union Française d'Hélicoptère. Thierry, where are you?
Yes, I'm here.
So this is Thierry, and he is the vice chair of EHA, just having been elected. We will continue to strive towards enhancing our position as the rotorcraft voice in Europe. I also would like to take the opportunity to thank Thomas Hein from DHV for his excellent performance as vice chairman during the past 3 years. Luckily, Thomas will continue to serve as a member of the EHA Board of Governors. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I started my career as helicopter pilot in 1977 in the German Army, and I received my basic training on the good old TH-55, also known as US-269 in Fort Rucker, Alabama. This was a great time. And then transitioned to the UE. After 5 years of gaining aviation experience within the German Army aviation, I decided to leave the Army and look for some adventures in the civil helicopter world. You may remember that during this period of time, there was still a wall dividing Germany in 2 parts. And the actual activities of my unit in the very north of Germany, they were very limited. All too often, the daily decision was only whether I should circle Schleswig-Holstein by the left or by the right. You may imagine this was quite boring. However, 1983, the adventure started in a company named Airloyd Deutsche Helikopter Flugservice in Bonn-Hangela, not far away from here. I started as a normal pilot in what you would call today SPO, Special Operations, specified in all kinds of crop dusting operation in Europe and in Africa, and pipeline and power line control in Germany. And I must tell you, I really enjoyed this kind of flying, especially in Africa on the single-engine helicopters, Bell 47 and Bell 206. Far away from any regulator and audits, without cell phone, just my crew, my helicopter, and my tent. This does not mean we did not follow any rules and regulation. No, we had our own designed SMS because we wanted to be successful and finally we wanted to survive. At the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, I decided to become a flight instructor because I wanted to pass forward my experience to young, enthusiastic pilots and help them to start their career with a solid and valuable training. At the same time, I had the opportunity to develop my own career by adding numerous type ratings on single-engine helicopters, on multi-engine helicopters, including IFR. And also by taking over responsibilities as crew training manager, flight operations manager, and finally as managing director of Airloyd Deutsche Helikopter Flugservice. However, when I started my career in the late 70s, I set goals for when I would have turned to 50. And these goals were either to be rich enough to buy my own helicopter or to become a HEMS pilot. To put all my experience into this type of operation. Well, the first target I did not make. But in 2005, at the age of 49, just in time, Luxembourg Air Rescue, the only HEMS operator in Luxembourg, offered to me to become chief pilot of the rotor wing department, then crew training manager, and finally flight ops manager. However, the most fun and satisfaction was flying the HEMS missions. Then on 23rd February 2016, after having piled up, or some may say survived, more than 16,000 flight hours on helicopters, I did my last HEMS mission on my 60th birthday. At the beginning of my career, 1977, nobody told me that one day a rule or a law would have prevented me from executing parts of my profession as pilot just because I'm 60 years old. Although I still would hold a valid medical class 1, which, by the way, was just renewed yesterday. Thank you. Luckily enough, I'm still employed. As for my career as a pilot, I'm still allowed to enjoy special operations and give flight training, and as flight operations manager, my CAA, who is also here today. Where is my CAA? Two guys, almost 50% of the Luxembourger CAA are here. So these guys, they keep me busy by their regular visits and audits. Now, and that is the reason why I'm standing here, the European Helicopter Association fills up the remaining hours of my days. As the delegate of Luxembourg, I've been a member of the European Helicopter Association since 2005. And if there is one thing I have learned, it is that non-profit organizations such as European Helicopter Association succeed only thanks to the support, thanks to the strong support of those who have the wisdom to understand that only united we can be strong, and that only united we can be heard. And when I say support, I mean financial support and human, intellectual support. As EHA is the European body for the national helicopter associations and Heli Offshore, strongly supported presently by 4 OEMs, Airbus, Bell, Leonardo, and Safran. And our affiliate member, EAC, we need strong national helicopter associations to be able to follow up our agenda. Let me better explain this concept. At national level, the NHAs, the National Helicopter Associations, have their national network and expertise to work with the National Association, the National Aviation Administration, to solve safety and regulation issues at national level. But at European level, we need to work together as EHA with our partners from EASA and the European Commission. Therefore, I ask all operators who are not members of their national helicopter associations to do so, to become member of your National Helicopter Association. And if there is no National Helicopter Association in your country, you may become a direct member of EHA. like we in Luxembourg. We don't have a National Helicopter Association, only one operator. That's the reason why I was able to join EHA. We need your expertise and your engagement to properly respond to the challenges that our sector is and will be facing in the years to come, both of European and international level. Naturally, I am perfectly aware that if we look at the numbers of operators in Europe, their difference in type of operations and culture and their size fleets entails a high level of commitment. In fact, there are about 1,700 operators in the EASA member states that only operate one helicopter, representing 72% of the total operators in the EASA member states, and about 2,000 operators with site fleets below 5 helicopters, representing 89% of the total number of operators in the EASA member states. But having said that, it is of utmost importance that the regulatory burden is proportionate to the size and type of operation, and that safety culture is widely promoted to also reach the smallest family-run business. The existing rules must be reviewed to identify the main sources of the inefficiencies and administrative burdens which do not improve safety and therefore should be either deleted or changed. So bottom line is that if we want to make a difference and if we want to safeguard our sector and our business, we need to take massive action and work together for our common goals. As Trevor already mentioned, recently the new basic regulation have been published. 800 pages, roundabout so. And the agency priorities, which are laid down in the EPAS 2019-2023, had to be adapted accordingly. But today, my plea for EASA is to not lose focus on our sector's needs for which we have been struggling for years. Not addressing certain issues like the single-engine helicopter operation in congested hostile environment will have a negative impact on aspects like improved safety, economic survivability, job opportunities, and level playing field, especially on the above-mentioned small companies. We must not forget the excellent and essential services which are provided to the society not only by the big players in offshore and HAMS operations, but in particular by the large number of small operators doing all, it starts well. I'm destroying the system. Doing all kind of commercial air transport, special operations and training while struggling through the jungle of national and European rules, AMCs, and different interpretations of these rules and AMCs by their national aviation administrations. As the voice, as the European voice of helicopter industry, through EHA, you have the opportunity to contribute to key discussions by sharing your knowledge of the sector's potential and needs, both with EASA as a regulatory body and with the European Commission on political level. How this is achieved is by engaging and influencing the system. A system, as indicated in the European priorities, is aiming at putting emphasis on the human dimension and the role increasing system performance and resilience. In May this year, as already was said by Trevor, a group of experts from the NAAs and the industry, including OEMs and operators, most of them members of the EHA, was tasked to jointly with the EASA develop the strategic rotorcraft safety roadmap. The roadmap focuses on rotorcraft transversal issues and include training, operations, initial and continuing airworthiness, and the environment and innovations. The agreed strategic objectives are, first, to improve the rotorcraft safety by 50% within the next 10 years. Because you should know, at the time, we count 1 non-fatal rotorcraft accident per week in the EASA member states, and 1.3 fatal accident per month in Europe. And secondly, we want to make positive and visible changes to the rotorcraft safety trends within the next 5 years. And third, not less important, we want to develop performance-based and proportionate solutions that help maintain competitiveness and sustainability of the European helicopter industry. Although David Solar from EASA will brief you in detail about the outcome of the roadmap right after my speech, I would like to spend just a few minutes to highlight how the human factor influences accidents and incidents as assessed by the Rotorcraft Roadmap Group, and why there is an urgent need to improve our training. A large number of in-flight accidents happen during high-risk training scenarios, especially when operating light helicopters. High-risk training scenarios are typically touchdown auto-rotations, hydraulic failure procedures, tail rotor control failure procedures. If the risk in training of specific emergency procedures is higher than the risk of suffering these failures in operation, something must be changed. We need to reduce the high-risk training scenarios in flight. Instead of using our training helicopters, which are at the same time our operational helicopters, we need to promote the use of qualified FTDs in order to reduce the risk to our operation and to reduce the costs and at the same time improve the skills of our pilots. And these qualified FTDs must be affordable to make them available also to the smallest ATO. Consequently, we need to debate about adapting the certification specifications for FTDs, taking into consideration new available simulation technologies like virtual and augmented reality, as you can see outside of this room. Reconfigurable simulators can use the same hardware for different types of helicopters. Additionally, there are already some SPNR recommendations available to reduce the risk in training by emphasizing threat and error management training, developing SOPs for emergency procedure training, and developing practices for student pilots for pre-flight risk assessment. Thinking about the individual private helicopter pilot, we need to ask ourselves, how can we reach them? How can we improve their safety awareness? Is an individual or is an annual proficiency check sufficient to pass the safety message? Should we not think about reducing the number of checks, but increase the number and volume of training? Another important challenge, which is caused also by the fragmentation of the European helicopter industry, is a lack of consolidated data, for example, on the number of flying hours, on the number of flights, across the different segments of the helicopter activities. This makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to assess the level of safety of the European helicopter operations. Here we need a consolidated approach from EASA, from the NAAs, from the OEMs, the operators, to collect exposure data and other relevant statistics. Now, there is a new kid on the block, the UAS, or UAV, which has a strong political support to be engaged in aerial services, which typically use the same airspace as helicopters. By a common approach of all stakeholders, we need to make sure that the implementation of these new air assets does not endanger safety of existing players and for third parties. Certification standards must be applied at least at the same level of those for manned aircraft. Implementing drones in ATM should not lead to an increase of costs for manned aircraft operation. In the high-level document called The Social and Economic Value of European Helicopter Operations, Challenges Ahead, which EHA published a few years ago, we concluded that the helicopter sector needs to be part of a holistic air transport policy, and that this demands greater investment in infrastructure and research and development, reduction in regulatory burden, and above all, a strong political leadership. We hope that being this concept somehow including in the European Commission priority, and we will be able to see, and then we will be able to see a considerable improvement in the years to come for the sector. It is a fact that collaboration with our esteemed colleagues from EASA has grown significantly, and that both parties usually pursue common goals on many topics. And I have experienced this personally by working closely with the agency in the Strategic Roadmap Group and in the ARCOM. It is also true that sometimes we might have different views, and it is important that we seek consensus. And for those situations where consensus is detrimental to the dissenting party, we ask a certain degree of flexibility is granted. EHA has been invited to participate in the EASA Rotorcraft Symposium since it was established, and during this time we have witnessed how the sector is prepared to come together when interesting topics are presented and when networking is highly facilitated. We believe these to be essential ingredients for a successful promotion of our sector and look forward to continue our operation with the agency in the years to come. Now I hope that we all will enjoy 2 interesting days together, and I look forward to have numerous face-to-face meetings with you during these 2 days. Last but not least, my thanks go to EASA and all the people who are behind this organization to have organized again this Rotorcraft Symposium. Thank you very much for your attention.